The parasha of this morning is called Parasha Shemot. The parasha of this morning is called Parasha Shemot, and it means names. But I subtitle it Forging of a Nation from the Furnace. I subtitle it Forging of a Nation from the Furnace. The Lord God, the God of our fathers, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, forged Israel together as a nation from the furnace of Egypt, from the furnace of slavery, from the furnace of pain, from the furnace of trials, from the furnace of what is even unimaginable to their forefathers, even though to Joseph, that will be what is going to take place. Yes, God has already given them a revelation, a vision of what is going to happen, but to that extent they never imagine it, to the extent of throwing that Pharaoh desired to throw the firstborn of Israel, all the male, into the rivers. It was never imagined to that level, for us to see the level of wickedness that a man can reach. So the God of our fathers forged us together as a nation, the nation of Israel, from the furnace of slavery in Mizraim. So, and let us see what takes place from there on. The second book of the Bible is called Shemot, which means names, as I said before. It is also the name of the first parasha of the book. It is known in English as the book of Exodus, as it relates the Exodus and the redemption of the children of Israel from slavery in Egypt. In the Bible, in the Bible of the Christian world, or in English, they call it the book of Exodus. But in Hebrew, it is called Shemot. But why did they call it Exodus? Because it narrates, the story narrates the movement of the children of Israel out of Egypt to the promised land. The exodus of the chosen people, the exodus of our forefathers from the land of Mizraim, from the land of pain, from the land of misery, from the land of slavery, from the land of suffering, into the land that flowed with milk and honey. The event in this book witnessed a new beginning for Israel. Remember, it witnessed a new beginning for Israel. These books that we are going, or that we are reading now, that we just started, you've got a beginning of the end, a beginning that, okay, this is the beginning of the pain and also of the end of the slavery, because this will lead them out of the land of Egypt. The exodus from Egypt and the receiving of the Torah by them on Mount Sinai. This will lead us to the Mount Sinai, where the Holy One, blessed be He, will give us His holy book, is the book of the Torah that we so cherish. The book of the Torah that it is said that this is a tree of life to those who take hold of it, and all its parts are what? Are pleasant. All its parts are peace. You see, so the path of the Torah is a path of peace. The book of the Torah is a book of life. It's a tree of life. If we can take hold, if we can cling onto it very, very, very tight. At the time of the Exodus from Egypt, the children of Israel witnessed the infinite divine light and saw truth on their journey to Canaan. At the time of the Exodus from Egypt, the children of Israel witnessed the infinite divine light, and they saw the truth and on their journey to Canaan. What did I mean by this? I said, when we came, we are going to read that, just the summary of the entire book of Shemot that I'm trying to give us now. When we go to Mount Sinai, there we saw the infinite divine light. There we are lifted up onto the real heavens. There the Holy One, blessed be He, came down to lift us up unto Himself. And there we saw the truth. There we saw Emek. There we saw Emet, and on our way into Canaan, on our way to the Garden of Eden. Because the land of Israel is where the Garden of Eden was situated. The book of Shemot relates the birth of Israel, of the Israelite people as a nation. They are forging into one people called Israel from the foundry of Egypt. The birth of Moshe, the servant of God, who he used to save us, to save them, their exodus from Egypt, their reception of the Torah of God at Mount Sinai, and their building the Mishkan, the sanctuary, or the tabernacle in the wilderness. All these are written in the book of Shemot. Parashat Shemot itself relates the birth of Moshe, a rabbi, and of him receiving his mission from the Holy One, blessed be he, at the burning bush to liberate the children of Israel from their bondage in Israel, in order to bring them to Mount Sinai, High Sinai, to receive the Torah. The parasha also relates the first encounter of Moses and Aaron before Pharaoh, a new king which has arisen in Egypt. The birth of the nation and the birth of Moses are one in the eighth sphere. Together they correspond to life. I said the birth of the nation and the birth of Moses are one in the eight spheres, in the highest of the highest level in the spiritual world. Together they correspond to life, for God is life. Moses was born to give life to the children of Israel. Moses was born as a deliverer, to deliver them from bondage, from the house of pain, from the house of slavery, into the land promised to our forefathers, to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, to the land flowing with milk and honey, to the land, the precious land, into the Garden of Eden, which is Canaan. So it is life that Moses has come to give unto his people, to redeem them by the strong hand of the Almighty. Through a series of miracles, Moses grew up in Pharaoh's palace. When Moses was older, he went out to see what was going on with his fellow Israelites. The Torah tells us he went out on the second day, and behold, two Israelites were quarreling. Moses said to the wicked one, "Why will you strike your brothers? Why will you strike your friend?" Moses said to the wicked one, "Why will you strike your friend?" From there, I just want to read a little, before I continue on that, I want to read a little portion here in the book of Shemot, chapter 1, verse 10. The book of Shemot, chapter 1, verse 10. And it reads, "Come, let us outsmart it, lest it become numerous, and it may be that if a war will occur, it too may join our enemy and wage war against us and go up from the land." I read again. "Come," Pharaoh is saying to his people, the new Pharaoh who does not know Joseph. Let me make this very, very clear, and with those that are watching on the net. It is not that Pharaoh does not know about Joseph. He knew who Joseph was perfectly well, because Egyptians are very, very good bookkeepers. They write their history and they kept them perfectly well. It is not that this new Pharaoh does not know Joseph. He knew who Joseph was perfectly well, but he does not want to recognize who Joseph was. He's not interested of Joseph. He said, they think that their forefathers saved us so they can come and become like our master. No. I don't care who Joseph is. He doesn't care. It's not that he doesn't know who Joseph was. He knew perfectly well, but he's not interested of what Joseph did to save Mizraim when Egypt was about to be destroyed. It was Joseph that God used to interpret the dream of his fathers, or of the Pharaoh forefathers, so that Egypt might live, so that Egypt might survive, so that Egypt might be the strongest nation at that time, like the superpower that we have now, the United States. But this man does not want to recognize that. He is not interested in what Joseph did to Egypt, or for Egypt. So therefore he said, "Come, let us outsmart it." You look at the word he used. Let us outsmart it. He didn't say let us outsmart them. He didn't say let us, he didn't use the word. He used the word "it" as if it is nothing, as if it is just an animal, as if it is non-living. These are dead people. They are non-living. To me, they are dead. That was Pharaoh is saying. To me, they are not human beings. To me, they are even less than animal, because animals are living. So he's using the word "it," and the word "it" is used for what? For non-living things. These are non-living. They are dead people. Let us outsmart it. Lest it become numerous. These non-living, these animals, may become numerous, and if there is a war against us, it will join with our enemy. This non-living will join with our enemy, and they will go and they will wage war against us and go out of the land. So, in the first place, why is Pharaoh want the people to remain in the land? If you want to outsmart it, because they are very strong and mighty, and they become prosperous in the land. So why do you want them not to go out of the land? That is the reason why you want to keep them in the land. Not only because you want to make them a slave for you, but because Pharaoh knew perfectly well from his astrologers, from his necromancers, that because of the children of Israel, that is why God is blessing Egypt. That is why he doesn't want them to go out of the land. So now we will not allow them to go out of the land. We will keep them in the land, and at the same time we are going to use them for slavery. So it's like you want to kill two birds with one stone. You want to keep them in the land so that it will continue to prosper more, and at the same time we are not going to give them free hand, because if you give them free hand, they will acquire more wealth. So let us use them as slaves at the same time. So I kill two birds with one stone. That is what Pharaoh was thinking that he wants to do. He thinks he's smart. Let us outsmart them, not knowing that he's shooting himself on the feet. Very stupid. It is a pity that a man will be shooting himself on the feet. It is a pity that a king, the leader of a people, will be cutting his own throne with his own hand. If you know that the Lord God is blessing you because of these people, why are you so jealous? Why do you think evil about them? If the people, they increase and they become strong, why can't you tell your people to burn more? It's the same thing that we are seeing now in our world that we live today too. So people say we are advanced, just like the Egyptians. We are smart. We are so educated, we are above everything. My body is mine. I can do whatever I want to do with my body. That is the new world of the new 21st century that we are living. Everybody has the right. The women can do whatever they want to do with their body. I don't have to burn 10 or 20. I can just burn one. I don't even need to even burn, because it is a body for me to burn. It is too much work. I want to enjoy myself. I want to enjoy my life. If your mama did not give birth to you, I don't think you are going to be enjoying that life. But that is what we are saying now. People are saying, I don't care, I don't want to have any children. And when the immigrant begins to have children and they multiply and they produce and they become numerous, you get jealous. And when they became because you are saying that we are practicing democracy. When it comes to voting and they vote and they put their own people there and they begin to do whatever they want to do, you become mad and you get upset. So who are these immigrants? What? But the immigrants are giving back. Why you are saying that you are advanced, that you are smarter than everybody else? That is what we are seeing here. The Egyptians are so advanced, they are so intelligent, they are even outsmarting themselves, they are even shooting themselves on the feet. Not knowing, because you think that it doesn't matter now. In the next 10, 50, 20, 50, 60 years, you are going to see the result of what you've done. Because gradually, they multiply. It doesn't happen in a second. They multiply and they try and we become very, very strong. We populate the entire land. Why? Because the other one refused to burn. Because they are very smart. Let's continue. Verse 11. So they appointed tax master over it. You see the word the Torah is using. Not they appointed tax master over them, but over it. In order to afflict it, because it is non-living. To them, they are animals, even lower than the animal, with burdens to build storage city for Pharaoh, Pithom, and Ramses. But the Torah is saying here, verse 12, but as much as they afflict it, so it will increase. The more you afflict it, the more it increase. And so it will spread out. The more will spread out. The more they want to kill it, the more it spread out. That is a saying that, not even a saying, I think it is the word of one of these genetics. I can't actually remember his name now. He's saying that the hardest thing to kill is life. He said, once a life take hold in a place, once a life take hold on a planet, to eradicate life is practically impossible. They try to eradicate Israel. It is practically impossible because the Lord God of Israel is with his people. They try as much as they can to hammer them with more hammer. No, it doesn't work. The more they hammer, the more they produce. You remove 1, 10 comes in. You remove 10, 500 comes in. So therefore the Torah said, and let's see. He said, and they became disgusted because of the children of Israel. They become it's like they became mad. There's madness. They became mad because of the children of Israel. They don't want to even see them. That is the first time we are seeing what we call it. What's the name of this word again? I want to remember now. They call it anti-Semitism. This is what we are seeing, an anti-Semitism in a global scale. Anti-Semitism in a what? In a national, in a global scale. Let us eradicate them, let us kill them because we don't like them. These are Hebrews, these are strangers, these are what? These are immigrants. These are what? These are not the owner of the land. They came in and they multiply and they grow and they took control of the entire land. And they make market and they make business and they become successful in every area of their lives. So therefore, they are going to be what? Our enemies. Because when our enemy comes to fight against us, they will combine with our enemies and fight against us and they will leave the land. How do you know they are going to combine with the enemies? Because you have already made them your enemy in your heart. You see? So, we are saying here now that Moses, at this time, he was born a gentle, beautiful, handsome boy. And he grew up in the palace of Pharaoh. He was trained in all the wisdom of Egypt. The Torah tells us. He knew all the in and out, all the cranny, all the corner of Mizraim. And one day, he went out to his people. He went out to see his own people, to discuss with them, to see their burden, their pains, to see what is going on. Why are these people being subjected to this cruelty? Why are these people being subjected to this kind of harshness? Why are these people being subjected to the insane wickedness. The first day he went out, he saw an Egyptian smiting an Israelite. He stood there and defended him. And he saved his brothers, the Israelites, not knowing yet that they are brothers, right? Saved the Israelite from the hands of the enemy, from the hand of the Egyptian, by killing the Egyptian. The second time, he went out again, the second day, to do what? To see what is the welfare of his people. And he saw two brothers, two Israelites, quarreling and fighting. And he told the one that was wicked, the one that was wrong, you did wrong. You should not have done this. You should have did this and this and that and this. But because the one that did wrong doesn't want to accept his fault, as most of us are, we don't want to accept our shortcoming. We don't want to see ourselves when Torah is pointing to us our mistakes. We harden our heart and we harden our soul. We become stiff-necked and we refuse to do what? To see the truth. This friend here refused to see the truth. He's not interested in the truth. Who are you to judge me? Who are you to point your finger at me? Who are you? Who make you a ruler and a king over us? Actually, Moshe was a king and a ruler over them because he was a prince of Egypt. He was raised in the palace of Pharaoh and he is a son to the daughter of Pharaoh. So technically, he's a ruler over you. Right? But he's saying, who make you a ruler and a king over us? Why are you telling me that I am wrong? Who are you to tell me that? Who is this rabbi to tell me, to point his finger at me that I am wrong? Is it, maybe the rabbi didn't say it in a nice way. The rabbi didn't come and tell me and pamper me and say, my friend, you are wrong, I want you to do this and that. Maybe the rabbi just come in and start telling me that I'm wrong. He didn't do it, he didn't say it in a systematic, in a civilized way. The Torah does not talk in a civilized way. The Torah points to you your fault right onto your face. If you want the Torah to be nice with you, then you can go and join those other people or some other kinds of religion that will pamper your sin. That will tell you, don't worry, everything is done. Somebody, one man has come and paid for all your sin, and so therefore you can continue to commit atrocity. Everything is fine. You are forgiven. Do sin, commit crime, kill, and steal and destroy. Somebody pay everything. You are okay. Don't worry. You are going to the kingdom of God. That is hallelujah. The Torah does not speak like that. There is nowhere in the Torah you can find that. Every man must pay for their sin. Every man must pay for their unrighteousness. Every man must pay for what he or she has done. Don't let anyone deceive you and tell you that somebody has come to pay for all your sin and so therefore it is hunky-dory, you can continue to remain in iniquity. And because somebody has come to pay for all those things. That is a message of the enemy, not of God, not in the Torah. So, Moshe was pointing to the one that was wrong. This you did wrong. This is not right. Why do you want to smite your brothers? The fellow said, who are you who make you a king or a master over us? The Torah called one of the men wicked. Why was he considered evil? Because he will, in the future tense, strike his friend. Why would he be considered sinful now? He did not yet hit anyone. He merely raised his hand. I want to say this again for you to understand. Why did the Torah call that man wicked? The fellow that wanted to hit his brothers. He has not hit him yet. He was just raising hand to hit him when Moses said, stop! Why do you want to hit your brothers? Why are you intended to hit your brothers? He has not hit him yet, but the Torah has already said he is evil. The Torah has already condemned him. Someone say, oh, who are you to condemn me? Who are you to judge me? But Moses, he that is righteous, He that is clean and holy can judge the unrighteous. The Torah even state that in the Messianic writing, I'm sorry about that, it said that at the last moment and the last day, the righteous will judge the unrighteous. Right? It is clean and clear. The righteous will judge the unrighteous. So don't let us come and say, who are you to judge me? You are not my God, you are not my master, you are not my mama, you are not a Supreme Court. You are not a judge here, you are not in the Court of Appeal. You are not in the Supreme Court of Canada, so you are not the Supreme Judge. You cannot judge. The Torah is saying, yes, you can judge. Because Moses is judging, no, you cannot do this to your own brothers. That is wrong. Now, then the fellow said, who are you to judge me? Who are you to do what? To say that I am wrong. Don't put my fault on my face. Don't put my fault on my face. I am okay. You can come and tell me in a nice way, but don't tell me in such a way that is rude. Okay? The way you want it, let it be. So let's see now. But the Torah has already judged that man as evil and as wicked. Because of what? Because the intention of his heart. It is not even the action. Before that action, that is an intent. The intention of the heart. The intention of his heart is to hit his brothers. And that is why he raised his hand to hit his brothers. And Moses said, no. God judged you by the intent of your soul, by the intention of your life. What you are intended to do. On that base, the Holy One, blessed be He, judge you. Rashi recites the word from the verse. Why will you strive? You see, why will you? It hasn't struck yet. It is a future tense. Why will you strike your brother? He hasn't done it yet, but he's about to do it. And so the intention of his heart is what the Holy One is judging him with, even though if he has not done it. Yeshua HaMashiach said that if you look at a woman and you lust after her, you have already committed a sin. Because they think that by committing a sin or by committing adultery or fornication is by you doing it in the act itself. It's by you going and lay with a stranger or with another man's wife or with a girl that you don't know. No. Yeshua is saying that it's not, because this is what the Torah is saying. It is not the act itself, but the intention already. That is what God is saying here. When you have already seen the woman and you are lusting after her in your soul, you haven't done it yet, but you have already fantasized it in your head. Oh, what a beautiful woman. Oh, what a blue-eyed woman. Oh, what a nice, beautiful lips. Oh, look at the shape of the nose. Look at the shape of the body. Oh, those fantasies in your head, you already committed adultery or fornication with her already in your head. And that's what the Torah is saying. It is the intent of your heart. To answer this question, he writes that although it had not yet hit him, I'm talking about Rashi now, he was called wicked for raising his hand to strike his brother. Rashi does not explain why one is considered evil for merely raising his hand to strike his fellow. He is only telling us that in this case, the person is considered wicked. Here we're talking about the intent of the heart, as I explained. Why was the person deemed wicked? Adonai created us, each and every one of us, to serve Him, to serve our Creator. From this, we understand that Adonai created each limbs, right, and every organ of the body to help fulfill this goal. The purpose of man, the purpose of our creation is for us to serve Him. How do we serve Him? By us serving our fellow brothers. If we can serve our fellow brother that we see, then we are serving the Holy One, blessed be He, that we do not see. If we cannot serve our brothers that we see, how can we say that we are serving the Holy One that we do not see? The purpose of our creation is to serve God, is for us to bring goodness, is for us to show kindness in the physical world, for us to uplift God in this physical world, but for us to show tzedakah to do what is good in the physical world. That is the main purpose of our creation. As it is done in heaven, let it be done on earth. That is it. As the angels praise the name of the holy ones, as the angels glorify the Holy One, blessed be He, every second, every minute, every hour, all the day long, the same should be done on earth. That is the purpose of our creation. That is the purpose of us lifting up, glorifying the name of the Holy One every time. Using all our organs, all our sense, everything that He has given us to glorify His name, to fulfill the goal of lifting up the name of the Holy One, blessed be He, in the physical world. For example, Adonai created our hands to give to one another. A hand which distributes tzedakah. However, if a person does not use his or her hand to benefit one's fellow, to the contrary, by using it to strike one's fellow, the person is sinning. That's what it's saying. Our hand is to do what? Is to give tzedakah. Our hand is to do what? Our hand is to assist, is to help our fellow brothers, our fellow sisters when they are in pain or when they are in trouble, or to assist them in one way or the other, to deliver them, to defend them, to bless them. That is the purpose of the creation of the hand. To extend an open hand to the one that doesn't have. But when you use the same hand and you raise it up to strike your fellow with the same hand, you are committing a sin. With the same hand, you are committing evil against your fellow. God has given you a home. A house. Right? You are a shelter for you to live in. And in the same shelter, you are committing crime. You are bringing evil things, and you are allowing evil things to be happening in your own home. You are serving idols in your own home. God has given you a car to take you from one position to another, and you use the same car to kill somebody deliberately, not intentionally, but intentionally you did that. That is evil. God has given us the technology of what? Of electricity. And you can use that electricity to electrocute somebody too, intentionally. So that is what he's saying. What you can use for positivity, you can also use it for things that is negative. So it depends upon individual. It depends upon your choice. It depends upon my choice. It depends upon what we choose. It depends upon the intent of our heart, of our soul. If we can come up and say, okay, I'm going to do what is good with everything that God has given me, then God will bless you more, as we saw in this parasha, in verse 2 of the parasha, where Pharaoh commanded the midwives to kill the Israelite, to kill the Hebrew boy. Once he's born, kill him. But the Torah said, and the midwives fear God. They have a choice. They can do exactly what Pharaoh said, but they choose another path. They say, no, we will not do this because we fear God. We will not kill an innocent life. We will not kill an innocent boy, a boy that does nothing, has not done anything wrong. Why must we kill him? Why must we do this evil? They choose another path. And the Torah said, and the Holy One, blessed be He, build them a home, build them houses. Because they did not do exactly what Pharaoh told them. Many people will come and say, oh, it is my teacher that told me, so I did it. My commander in the army told me to kill, so I killed. My general in the army commanded me to kill, I killed. I have no choice. I cannot say no. You have a choice. You can say no. Many of the Nazi, many of the soldiers, that was their excuses. My general told me to go and kill the Jews, so I have no choice. I have to kill them. You have a choice. You can say no. I know because I don't want to be killed. If I disobey others, they will kill me. But God's name will be written in the book of life. Because this is not the end. If you die, you live another life. You will be recorded among the just, among the righteous. Why must you kill somebody that have not done you evil? Why must you kiss somebody who have not done wrong unto you? But because your commander commanded you, so therefore you are going to do that. No. You have a choice. Don't come and lie and say you don't have a choice. These women, they have a choice. They can decide either to follow the will of Pharaoh or to follow another path. A path of justice, a path of righteousness, a path of peace. And they choose another path, not the path of Pharaoh. And they were rewarded for their goodness, for what they did. So therefore, we as a person, we as a group, we as the descendant of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, we as a synagogue has the path, has the choice, either to follow him or not to follow him, either to clip ourselves into the Torah or to do the other way around. We can say yes to the Torah, or you can say no. It is your choice. You decide. In other words, the very act of lifting one's hand, although the person did not yet hit anyone, contradicts the very purpose of which Adonai created the hand. Therefore, the sin against Adonai began with the act of lifting one's hands up, the intent of the act, of your act. Moshe, a rabbi, had a choice. They couldn't recognize him. I wanted to bring a little parallel between Moshe and the Messiah. The Israelites couldn't recognize him. The Israelites that were in Egypt, they couldn't recognize Moshe because he was dressing also like the Egyptians. Use him to save one of them, knowing that through him, the Holy One, blessed be He, will use him to deliver them from the land of Israel. They stood up against him and they said, "Who are you? And who make you a judge and a master over us?" But yet him has God made a master and a judge over them. They rose up and said, "Who are you to judge me?" But him has God choosing to be our judge. Him has God choosing to be our rabbi. And him has God choosing to say, after Moshe, there have never been a prophet raised in Israel like Moshe. This is the same man that they were judging. Say, "Who are you to be a master? Who make you a master? Who make you a judge over us?" The same man God make their master and their judge. So for you to see is ironic, right? Because people say, he said, the chief cornerstone, the stone that has been despised, the stone that is not recognized, this stone, as the Holy One, blessed be He, make the chief cornerstone. Moshe was despised. Who are you? You are nobody. Who make you a judge and a king over us? But the same man, the same stone, God had made the chief cornerstone, a deliverer, to take us out from the land of Israel to the promised land. We couldn't recognize him. The same way they couldn't recognize the Messiah, because they are waiting for their own Messiah, the Messiah in their own image, not the Messiah in the image of God. Man always has this problem. This has been our problem from the beginning. We want to create God in our own image. But that is not the true case, because the Torah speaks completely and openly that man was created in the image of God. We are created in the image of God, but we want to create God in our own image. We are looking for God that suits us. We are looking for a God that will speak the way we speak. We are looking for a God that is going to do what? To pamper us and tell us, continue in your iniquity, continue in your sin, continue in your evil way. Nothing will happen. Everything is good. Everything is hunky-dory. No. Moshe has God risen up as his chief cornerstone. The same thing that happened, you see, history do repeat itself. The same thing that happened to Joseph. The same thing, they could not recognize Joseph. People could not recognize him because he was dressed in the Egyptian way. They couldn't see him. They couldn't see the true Joseph. It was later that until he revealed himself, until Moshe revealed himself unto them that I am one of yours, I am one of you. They could recognize him. Even though initially they even despised his leadership, but later on they begin to see that God is with him, that God is using him, that God has called him. It never ends, it never stopped there. God has taken us up and has given us his Torah, the Torah of life, that we should take hold of the Torah, because Torah is life. He said, I've given you unto you two things these days, life or death, choose one. But I advise you as your creator, I advise you as your God to choose life, for life is good. Torah is life to everyone that take hold of it. Or his way a way of pleasantness, or his path at peace. If we could just understand and see from the perspective of God, from the prism that God is looking us from, if we can see the way God is seeing, our life will never remain the same again. The hand that God has given us is to give, to help, to assist, to bless, not to curse, not to strike, not to destroy. Let us all make sure to learn from this week's parasha. We must use every fiber of our being to provide goodness and kindness to all those with whom we come into contact. Then we will be sure to bring Moshiach now. Let us use all our being, all our life, every part of our life, every areas of our life to do what? To show goodness, to show kindness, to show the purpose, the reason why God has created us here, to show that we are different, that we are the light of the world. Let us use every being that God, every fiber of our being to show, to do what is good. And then if all of us can combine together and do this, the Messiah will come. Let us do what is right. Let us do what is just. Let us be obedient to the will of God. Don't let us say, who are you, who have make you a master over us. As many people will come and say, oh, this is an Old Testament, this is old, it is no longer new. We have the new one. From there, we can do everything that we want. But this is the fundament. This is the foundation. Without the foundation, nothing can be built. You have to understand, the Torah is never old, it's always anew. It's always new. It's always fresh. It is for you. It is for me. It's for us to understand the purpose of our creation. The purpose of us here in this world, in this material world. That our purpose in the material world is to show goodness and kindness. And His blessing will remain with us. Shabbat Shalom.